My brothers and sisters, may the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus and his disciples set out for the villages of Caesarea Philippi. Along the way, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter said to him in reply, "You are the Christ." Then he warned them not to tell anyone about him. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed and rise after 3 days. He spoke this openly. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. At this he turned around and, looking at his disciples, rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do." The Gospel of the Lord. In many ways, the reaction of Peter to Jesus' words this morning shouldn't surprise us. It was a common kind of understanding within Israel that when the Messiah came, the Messiah would free them, and of course they saw that literally a freedom from the domination of a foreign power, and that they would end up becoming the great powerful leader. And so for Jesus to suggest that part of the process of being the Messiah entails things that would be inconceived at the time, that he'd have to suffer and die, that he would then after 3 days again rise, would have been something totally unheard of for the disciples. And so Peter, in rebuking him, of course, is speaking from what he understands the Messiah to be. And it takes those 3 years of ministry with Jesus and ultimately the event of crucifixion and resurrection from the dead that finally make it clear to the disciples what it means to know who this Jesus is and who Jesus, in fact, is in their midst. It's interesting, again, we find that in Mark's account especially, there's always sort of an image of putting the hand up and saying, "Shh, don't tell anybody." You hear it all over and over again. We hear it again today. And of course, part of that, from the perspective of the writer, is that knowing full well from the examples that he's given, how people miss the point. They end up going in the wrong direction. We saw it the other day when they're looking about the issue of having food, etc., and running off to see Jesus because he had fed them. And rather than seeing these as signs of something far more important, far more interiorly to be experienced, they see the kind of concrete, practical things. And so for them to know this Jesus is the Messiah, but the Messiah, as Peter suggests, would be the last thing that Jesus would want. It takes in the course of our own individual journeys of faith sometimes more than 3 years for us to really know who Jesus is. And as we continue to grow in faith, of course, the hope is that the grace that's operative in us will ever make it clearer and clear to us, not only who he is for the world, but in a very unique way, who and what he means for us.